I didn't have it plugged in far enough. Is it Laszlo? Thank you for the comment. I was trying to figure out if my sound was working, and I couldn't have everything plugged in. Now I can see it coming up on my. Damn it! Didn't have it plugged in far enough. Is it Laszlo? Thank you for the comment. I was trying to figure out if the sound was working. Man, one of these days I'm gonna hire a professional. So I've been talking about fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and the problem I had going into this was I wasn't sure what I was going to talk about. And the thing I was worried about too is that the sound wouldn't be on because I've been having this issue for the last few streams. So I think, anyways, perfect example of, even when the thing that you're worrying about manifests, generally it's not that big of a problem. I was like, all right, so we missed the sound for the first few minutes. My microphone sound is on so I'm using a lav mic, a wireless lav mic, and it looks like the mic is about dead, even though I thought I had it plugged in for charging. So we're gonna go until the mic dies on me. And in the meantime, I work on this painting. I don't like how some of this is working right here. So this looks like too much of a lump on his forehead. So I'm going to work to sort of change that a little bit while making it not, hopefully it blends in with the painting. All right, well, we'll work on this. So, yeah, I wanted to talk about the things that we worry about, the things that other people worry about, and how they can, they stop us from taking action on things that we might want to do for ourselves. So, dang it. Before my turned my mic on or had it plugged in properly, I was talking about how I had met resistance before I started doing all the outlaw Wild West type paintings. I was doing like fantasy stuff, like mermaids and floating trees and fairies and stuff like that. And I decided I wanted to do something different, and so I had the idea for the outlaw paintings, and I approached a couple of venues that I'd worked with, gallery stuff, and I kind of pitched the idea. And it mostly got shot down as like, well, we don't really want, Westerns aren't our thing. Even though what I was wanting to do, I didn't really, it had a Western theme, but I wasn't really thinking about them as being Westerns, like in a genre. And, as is most things, you can't really explain paintings you haven't created yet to people. They will have a hard time getting it. And so, but that's one of the things you run into when you're dealing with the business side of painting or art, is that you have to get other people enrolled in it, and you have to overcome their, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So the acronym of FUD, maybe some people understand what I'm talking about. So the doubt was like, all that was basically getting that from resistance from people that I wanted to display the work with, or I was pitching the ideas off of, and a lot of it, when I mentioned it, so a lot of times I'll talk about the things I want to do before I actually go into doing them. So a lot of the reaction I was getting, whether it was from galleries or individuals, was like, shrugged his shoulders, like, I don't know, like they don't want you to do anything different. They like what you're already doing. They don't see how you're gonna do this. They see your work you're doing now, and it's all fantasy and mermaids and floating trees and weird things. Like, what are you going to do with cowboys? That doesn't make any sense. And so that was the sort of response I was getting when I would pitch the idea. But I was determined to do it anyways, I guess. And so when I did the paintings and I started taking them to festivals and things, they actually did really well. They did better than I had expected, and I did well with a whole range of people. Like, it wasn't, like I would go to San Francisco and sell outlaw paintings to all kinds of people, and I wouldn't necessarily consider San Francisco a Western, a town where you'd want to go sell Western paintings. But like I mentioned earlier, like I never really thought of my paintings as being Western in theme. I mean, they were Western in sort of the genre, the outside appearances of the characters, but the content of the painting, what was going on, was more related to attitudes of the characters, which was more universal, I think. And that was the aim of it, was to show it as sort of a modern take on it. But it was weird, the resistance I got from people, because, I mean, the genre of Western movies has always been popular, you know, but in the art, it was always focused on traditional, like, cowboys and stuff doing, you know, like roping steers or whatnot, and that's not what I was wanting to aim at. I mean, that was, anyway, I'm kind of getting off subject. So, like I said, I ran into all this sort of resistance from people, at least the resistance to the idea, and I'm glad I did it anyway. What I ended up listening to was just what my own interests were, and I was interested in doing it, and I think I kind of took the pushback as sort of a challenge. Like I guess I'll show them, and I'll make the paintings anyways, and then when they take off, I'll be taking off with them, and they'll be sitting around, you know, not. They won't be a part of it. So I guess what I was looking for was the collaboration with the venues that I was working with at the time. You know, I think even, you know, this whole time I was doing festivals, I kind of had my eye on doing the gallery scene. I just had to figure out how to make it work in a real way. You know, at that point. Then every time I thought I had a good idea that I think would work well on a broader scale, it was just the galleries were not all about it. And that's not the only time. Like, the first time I tried to sell, so I had figured out how to make canvas prints of my paintings around 2007. And they started, at first when I did it, I couldn't figure out how to, there was a lot of work. The prints needed work. I had to paint on top of them and fix them up to make them look right. I couldn't get the colors to print out. And for a while, I just kind of resigned and gave up. It was like I couldn't get it to work. It was hard to explain to people, to sell it. There was a number of hang-ups. But I knew that was what was going on in the gallery scene and other fine art markets, was selling these canvas prints, but I could not figure out how to make it work for me. Until I saw a friend who bought a big printer like I had and took his paintings out to the boardwalk and these prints and just kind of hung them out like flags on a display, and he started selling them like quickly. And then I realized, like, oh, but he didn't have all these color issues and things that were making the paintings a lot of work. But it made me realize that, oh, this can work. And so I went back to figuring out how do I make this happen. And so anyways, I figured out how to do the prints correctly, how to stretch them and get the stretcher bars made. Like, I figured all this stuff out. Kind of give you the nutshell here. And it changed a lot of things. Like, all of a sudden, people loved it, and it changed the amount of money I was able to make at these venues quite drastically, and allowed me to travel farther and do events farther away, because I could generate more revenue at an event than I could just selling what I was selling, other paper prints and some originals and stuff. But when I first went to one of the galleries I was working with and said, hey, I was doing a show with them, and I said, hey, let's put these Giclées in there, and I met resistance from them too. A lot of uncertainty and doubt. They're like, well, we don't think our collectors will buy that. We have other artists that, their paintings are almost the same price as these prints, and it's just too expensive, and blah, 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 blah. I got all kinds of, like, why it wouldn't work, and I convinced them to just go for it. And they sold a number of them, and all of a sudden they were believers. So, I guess when you go to look at like what you're going to meet when it comes to fear and uncertainty and doubt, you're going to meet other people's uncertainty and doubt. And so how do you walk them around it so that it doesn't prevent you from accomplishing something you're trying to get at? And convincing others, that's a whole other topic. But really, what it boiled down to with some of that was that it didn't cost them anything to take a try, because I didn't make them buy it up front and all that kind of stuff. But once it worked, then they're believers. Another time I met other people's fear and uncertainty and doubt was when I first got a distribution deal in the UK, and that deal was arranged mostly on the premise of the work I was doing, which was all the Wild West stuff. And so the problem was that they saw that the quality of the work was there, but what they didn't believe was that they could sell Westerns. That won't sell here. That's what I was told. And they wanted business guys in suits and stuff. And so what I did is I just took my Wild West stuff and put business suits on them, and changed the time. I guess, what would you call it? The period. So instead of the 1800s, it was the 1960s. And my guess is that people are people, and they were doing the same thing in the 1850s as they were in the 1960s, to a large degree, outside of the technology and wardrobes of the time. If you don't believe in yourself, how can you expect other people to believe in you? That's true. So I can see your comments on YouTube. So if you guys have questions you want me to answer, please jump in, and I'll peek over there now and then and get to it. So so they didn't want it. They wouldn't do it, and so I had to create a whole new body of work. And the reason it was good for me to do that too, because one thing I didn't want to do was be pigeonholed into doing Outlaws and Wild West stuff. So I was like, I wouldn't have done it just to do it. I did it because I wanted to broaden the umbrella of genres of work I could do. I realized that if I was pigeonholed into something that I got tired of eventually, then it wouldn't be sustainable. And that was one of the concerns I had going into the gallery scene at all, was that most people had to have some sort of a genre or a shtick or a gimmick or one thing they did, and that's what, because that's what became easy for a gallery to sell, something that was easy to explain, or not easy, but it was readily identifiable as this is this artist. And if I was all over the place, then how are they going to talk about it, I guess. But I figured that if I could have a number of things that I did, that wouldn't be an issue, and they were all related because they're all figurative work and they're all sort of storytelling and that kind of thing. And so what happened is I did those paintings, and they did fairly well. But what happened is, like, there was a lot of collectors that would see my work in those galleries in the UK, and then they would look me up and see all this outlaw stuff I was doing, and then they would want that. But the distribution company just wasn't very nimble or something. Galleries would get requests. The galleries would have to request from the distributor to get those pieces, and then the distributor just fell flat. They didn't act upon it. And so what happened is the collectors, they don't wait around for a gallery to figure out what's going on. They just look you up and they see you. Oh, you're selling it to this gallery in the U.S. So I can just call them up and buy it. And that's what happened, is that they started losing all these sales to my U.S. gallery accounts because they couldn't or wouldn't carry the work that was selling. And what they did instead was turn around and try to tell me that the work that I was sending over there wasn't selling through, and they're trying to figure out what I could do differently. But then I found they didn't realize that the internet was around and people were messaging me about the paintings they bought, and so I was getting this runaround from the galleries in the UK about the distributor about these not selling through, and are complaining about paintings that I know sold because the people that bought them are writing to me about them. So they're trying to use this of shoving this idea of things aren't going well to keep you jumping through hoops, and it was just a bunch of nonsense. Anyways, I'm not trying to like throw shade on, I'm not mentioning them by name. I'm not trying to like disparage anybody here, but that's kind of what, behind the scenes. So all 4 people that are watching, don't tell anybody. Yeah, so I was discussing with my friend Chet, who's posted on here a little bit, that I'm having all kinds of doubts about even what to talk about. It's like I come up with this idea or premise, and then I show up to the live stream. I'm like, my mind just kind of goes blank. I don't even know what I'm going to say, and I don't want to say stupid things. I don't want to be boring. But then I realized like it never really matters, because by the end of the stream, I was like, it is what it is. Either I had the sound on or I didn't. All of these things, and it never really matters that much. And I think the important thing is to just go do it. And if it fails, it's going to fail, and if it doesn't, it won't. And who cares? So, did you have fun on your first day but selling on Venice Boardwalk? If so, how did you handle that? I had complete uncertainty the first day I went on the boardwalk. I didn't know if I was going to find a place to sell it, if people were going to give me shit, like if I was going to have problems with other people, like that's their spot. I didn't know what the police were going to do about it. I had always sort of like, I had no idea. I didn't know if it was going to work at all. I didn't even know what to sell my things for. Like I didn't know how to display it. I didn't know, there's a lot of things I didn't know and couldn't know, and things that happened I couldn't have even foreseen. Like, so I put my paintings out on the board, I had a blanket. I just put it on the ground to keep the dirt, at least my paintings weren't laying on the concrete full of spit and dried up bubblegum stuff. And so I had these gouache paintings, which are like opaque watercolors, and they were framed under glass with a mat, and the sun was beating down on them, and they started getting condensation inside the glass, and I had to quickly take apart these metal frames and lay them out on the ground. Like, basically, it's like I had to take everything apart and lay it out even more raw and unfinished and ugly looking, and lay it on the ground. People were like, well, how much? And I didn't even know how to answer that question. I'm like, I don't know. $100 or whatever. Like, so, it's hard to say what I remember, because that was like 22 years ago, but, I know that I didn't know what I was doing, and I guess, for what it's worth, I didn't let the uncertainty of knowing what I was doing stop me from trying. Not because like I'm just a go-getter, but mainly because I was desperate. And like I needed to make some money somehow or another. And what I wanted to do was sell my art more than at the time when I was working at Macy's. I did not care about Macy's. So, I guess at the time I was more afraid that I was going to end up not doing what I wanted to do altogether, because I couldn't find a job to do it. Like, I was trying to get into animation studios and all that. So, um, yeah, like, so the thing is like, no matter what level you're starting out, like, there's lots of that fear starting out in anywhere, I think, and that just morphs into something else. The farther you go along in any journey, the more obstacles come your way to greet you with it, and you're always fighting that uncertainty and doubt that comes from either from other people or from inside whatever it is that you're doing. Your own uncertainty. I was lucky enough that I didn't get a lot of pushback from my family. Like, they tended to believe in me. Although while I was struggling on the boardwalk, trying to make ends meet, my dad would come out and visit me, and he'd be like, "Well, I wish you could have went and become a doctor, a lawyer. You could have, because I was pretty good in school. He believed in me that way. It's like he hated to see me struggling as an artist until the day he went to a show with me, and I made more sales in one weekend than he made in his job all year, and then he never said anything about it again." But that took a while. But I'm fortunate that I don't have this sort of background dialogue from my family. That my family always, the way I remember, they always supported what I wanted to do. Like, remember when I got my scholarship to go to art school, my dad was like, "I can't afford to send you to art school. I don't make that kind of money." And I'm like, "Don't worry, old man. We'll take care of it." And I got a scholarship, and then I ended up working my way through college. It didn't cost my parents, they didn't have to sell their house to pay for my art school or anything like that. The FUD must have evaporated a few sales. Possibly. In the sense that it'll evaporate more if you let FUD stop you from even trying. I think that's the worst thing, that the worst outcome is that you don't bother to investigate or explore or even try to do something because you let this fear, which is mostly your imagination, like when you're afraid of something, like, what is it that you're afraid of, really? Most of what you're afraid of is whatever it is that you're imagining. It doesn't even exist. There are things that come up in life that are, very daunting and can cause lots of fear. I'm not saying that fear doesn't exist, but maybe I'll just kind of frame this as like from my experience and the way I feel, the way I seem to go through things is that most of the things that I sit around and ruminate about and worry about are never the things that really come to fruition and cause me lots of problems. However, that rumination can cause me to take actions that are problematic or counterproductive. So it is worth, I think, taking the time in any situation to evaluate whether you're making a decision because you're afraid of, afraid of missing out. Like, I guess that's the FOMO, fear of missing out on something. You're afraid that you're going to fail to the point where you can't even, you don't know where you're going to get your next meal, or you're going to lose your place. You're not going to be able to afford to pay your rent, any of that sort of stuff. But mostly what we're sitting around thinking about, at least in my mind, is like, I start ruminating about what am I going to do next in the future? What about like, what happens after this month or that month? How am I going to like get that to go? Like, and or you have a really good idea and you have no idea how to get it started, and that fear of maybe losing everything, like blowing up everything you have going for you to pursue something that might be better and you have no idea. And so we let the fear of losing our little grip on the little corner of the world we have, we're afraid of letting that go to, try to make something work better. All those things. And I don't think that you ever get rid of that entirely. That's always kind of in the background. But like I said earlier, if you let those things dominate your decision making, then you will miss out on doing something better for yourself. You will miss out on those things. But the irony is that you won't know it, really. I mean, when it comes to, a lot of things you don't know what you're missing out on, or what you're taking on. You don't even know what you're taking on a lot of times. Like, yeah, let's see here. Yeah, when things do happen, even if they do go sideways, they often aren't as bad as you think they are. Like, for example, this live stream, like, this is like the third or fourth time I've had issues with the sound, and even though I try to not have issues with the sound, it keeps happening. And it's aggravating, but the world doesn't come to an end. Like, so, like, most of the things that you're going to spend time fretting about aren't even worth fretting about, because when they do happen, they do amount to not much. Like, I think it's kind of funny when people talk about making art like they're taking a risk doing something. And I'm like, you ain't taking a risk. This isn't heart surgery. It's art. It's a painting, like taking a risk. Like, what are you risking? That you might screw up a painting that nobody cares about because they haven't seen it yet? Risk wasting your time. I don't know. There's risks involved in quitting your job or whatever it is, to pursue a career as an artist or anything else, like moving to a new town to pursue a new life goal or something. Like, those are risks. I would say, like, anything that is kind of upheaving the systems around you that you've gotten to rely on, like your network of friends, or that when you move to a new town, you're giving up all the connections that you've already had in the old place, and all that. Any sort of major drastic change in life is going to come with its inherent risks, I suppose. It's heart surgery. Yeah, the sun keeps rising and keeps setting, and keeps rising. Like, it's kind of relentless. Things keep moving on, and it's hard not to worry about things. Everybody does it to one degree or another, and the more you take on, the more there is to worry about, I suppose. Like, I still, wring my hands over all kinds of things that I'm doing, wondering if it's the right choice. So how do you know if you're doing the right thing at any given time? Is like that's the crux of it. Is like you will never know until it's too late to change your mind. So the only thing you can really do is, um, like I try to take like when it comes to like certain decisions, I try to take my emotions out of it to a certain degree. Like you don't want to take a drastic action because you're irritated about a situation, or you have some sort of self-righteousness about the situation, that you think that you deserve something different, or somebody's mistreating you. There's all kinds of ways to get sort of dragged into that internally. And so I try to turn these sort of things into a math equation, not really a math, but like being very pragmatic and practical, like what really makes sense. If you could imagine it happening to someone else, like if you can take yourself out of it and just see if like what is a logical decision to make in any given situation, and does it make sense? And sometimes even if it makes sense, it can be hard to follow through on, because it can have repercussions on relationships and friendships and business partnerships and stuff. But the important thing to recognize is, ultimately, you've got to do what makes sense for you, even if it isn't going to be received with open arms from the people that are around you. You have to, if you accept a situation or don't do something about when something isn't working, it isn't always going to self-correct. In fact, it probably won't. And the thing that you avoid dealing with because you're afraid of how it's going to hurt someone's feelings or any number of things, is just going to fester. It's going to turn into a bigger issue for you down the road, or it's going to turn into something that isn't manageable for whoever else is involved in the decision, like whoever it's affecting. And so let me see here. This is, at some point you kind of have to figure out where your boundaries are, and what you're willing to accept and tolerate. It might be that. It might be that, something really needs to change to move on to a better position. And that might require you putting pressure on a situation, in a business relationship or whatever. It might require some sort of pressure to cause the other party to take action. Like you don't want to be forcing and twisting people's arm, but you can set yourself up in a way that is guiding the behavior in a way that you want, or the interaction or the relationship in a way that you want it to go into. I'm not talking about like I said, I'm not talking about twisting arms and browbeating people and shaming them into something. The way I do it is I generally give people a choice of things that are options. Like they come to me with a business proposal or some sort of whatever it is, and or if I want something to happen, I will give people a choice between A and B, and having kind of some knowledge about what my intentions are, I will do one thing versus another depending on what choice they make. So that's kind of what I mean by pressure. Is I give an option on something, and then the person on the other end either takes the option or declines it, and then I move on to the next thing, the next step, depending on which way they, whether they accept it or not. Like it's hard to really plan out what you're going to do too far ahead because you don't know how anybody's going to react to what you're doing. And I think, when it comes to back to that fear and uncertainty and doubt issues, like there's no real way to predict how people are going to act, even if you know them fairly well. The only thing you can do is understand how you're going to react no matter what they do. And that's what I mean by kind of setting the boundaries. You're like, where you stand on something, and anybody else's projection onto you is just that, their projection and their problem. So you kind of have to, be like in my jujitsu training, I call it being like old dirt, where or like a rock, I'm a big heavy rock you can't turn over, or I'm a big pile of dirt that you can't do anything with. You're gonna need a shovel. Like you just you know how to position and balance yourself in such a way that it's hard for anybody to push you in a direction. And it's not because how you're strong and lift heavy weights. It's just that you know where the center of gravity is, and you know how to use your center of gravity. You know how to use your positioning to cajole people into another position, keep them off balance, or to slowly advance your position, like methodically. So I guess maybe that's what I'm getting to, is there's a certain amount of being methodic in your actions, and it takes, basically some practice and logic, I guess. This guy's got a weird haircut. Like when I'm, I'll go back to my jujitsu analogy. Like my advantage is not youth and athleticism anymore. Like the guys I train with are, their 30s, maybe late 20s. The advantages I do have are my size and strength, but even that becomes less valuable as you train against more skilled opponents. So the thing I do have an advantage is patience and experience. And so I can wait people out until they mess up, and then I can take advantage of their mistakes. Or, and when I'm training with somebody, I know how to use my attributes of size and strength. Like, I weigh like 250 pounds. And while somebody who's trained knows how to deal with that, somebody who's my size and trained also knows how to use that to my advantage. And so when I'm training against somebody, I will basically, through sort of a methodical sequence of movements, and pin them into a position where they don't have a lot of choices left, and any choice they have results in them getting choked or armbarred. And it doesn't happen quickly. It happens, slowly and methodically. Until you are training against an even more skilled opponent than you, and then they can see the traps that you're laying, and then they have counters. So there's always a counter to a counter. It's, so, it's like a chess game, and which is what life is like, business is like. I enjoy the people I work with and the galleries, but there's also this sort of trying to make things work for everybody's out for themselves when it comes to business most of the time. And I'm not saying that that's the attitude you need to take in business, but you should probably be aware that that's the attitude that a lot of people have. And knowing how to safeguard yourself against those attitudes is probably a requirement. So not taking things personal when people try to leverage things against you, especially the things that are your sort of soft spots. It's going to happen. I know this doesn't have much to do with fear, uncertainty, and doubt, but whatever. So yeah, don't take you if you take things personal, you're going to deal with a lot of anguish all the time because you're going to feel sorry for yourself, and you're going to start acting out of anger, which is kind of the other side of fear. You're going to start getting pushed around by people who realize that you don't have control over your emotions, or don't know how, I don't think people have really control over their emotions, but you can find ways to manage your emotions better so that they aren't making the decisions for you. So like, there's no wrong or right feeling about anything, but those feelings aren't really most of the time aren't a great guide to action. And so learning how to take the way you feel about a situation kind of out of your decision process, how you're going to take action, and then instead using some sort of practical way of coming into it, figuring out what your objective is, how can you get there, and how can you get there under a way that is like acceptable to your own ethical and moral guide, compass. Some people don't care and they'll do all kinds of unscrupulous things, and you can't avoid those people at all the time. And so if you're going to, I guess I'm talking to artists here, if you're going to be dealing with selling your art for a living, you're going to end up dealing with people who are unscrupulous, whether it's absent-minded or not. You're going to be dealing with this in any business probably, and you're not going to be able to waltz through life just avoiding this situation all the time. So you have to learn how to deal with people that are constantly throwing you curveballs and all these things. Like, there's a point where you don't have to deal with it. You want to, if it's untenable, then of course there's no sense in like dealing with a situation or a business relationship that is just completely sideways all the time, because it's it's a waste of your time and your energy and your effort. Then definitely you gotta figure out what to do then. But just the fact that somebody makes it difficult for you on occasion, that's not a reason to not do business with them. It's like some people are just difficult, but other than that, they are good business people. You're always trying to guess someone's intentions. Like, people are often do things that are unscrupulous and sideways, but it's not sort of a intention, something like that. They're not trying to, it's not about you, I guess. They may be unscrupulous and it's a character flaw, but it has nothing to do with you. Like, they're not doing it to you, they're doing it to everybody. And the question is like, are you going to put up with it? Or can you figure out a way to deal with that sort of a situation? And ultimately, that's what you got to figure out: is it worth your time? Because ultimately, what you're doing is when you're dealing with anything, you're taking time to deal with it. And if your time is being sucked up in solving dumb problems all the time, then it's not being focused on making new artwork or whatever else you could be doing with your time. So you don't, like, are you spending your time chasing somebody around all the time trying to get an answer on something, or like whatever it might be? Kind of swirling around here, not sure what I want to do this next. Let's see. I think I'm going to stop here in a couple of minutes. I've met my live stream quota for the day. So this painting will hopefully be in a show with Distinction Gallery the middle of October. Next weekend I will be in Austin for a book signing for my books that were released, and then the pandemic hit. I didn't get to go to all these events to promote the books and stuff. So if you're in the Texas area, Kenny, stop on by and say hello. All right, I'll put an end to it for now. And hope you guys enjoyed. I will see you. I guess I won't be here next week. I'll be in Austin, so come see me there. Probably won't be doing a live stream there though, but I will be there, high-fiving people, shaking hands, all that good stuff. All right, I will see you guys later.